Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. We're going to talk real quick about these F and K. That's F is in Frank, E is in, I don't know, kangaroo. F and K hand machines. Now, these are pneumatic hand machines that are made in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. They're available through the G. Gibson Company in England online, and obviously from the manufacturer. These are generally marketed towards the carving of soft stone, and when I say soft stone, I mean everything that isn't granite. Marble and limestone is what they typically are used for. These belong to a friend of mine named Steve. I've got one of the smaller shank tools, like this. It's in one of the other videos, and someone had asked if I could do a little more in-depth on the F and Ks. I haven't spent any significant amount of time carving with them. They typically are used for softer stone. This is a proprietary tool. This is what the original F&K factory tools look like, with this neck down shank, and they've got a softened, it's more octagon than square. And usually anytime you see a tool that has a square shank, it's made for carving harder stone so you can control it. Now this, I assume, is a 10 millimeter. It does have a carbide shank or carbide blank installed in it. So this would carve, pretty well. They have different size receivers. Now, looking quick on websites, there's not a lot of information online about these. And like I said, I'm not an expert on these tools, but they do have an option for different size tooling. Now, this smaller one runs the tool that I showed you, the proprietary tool. This also has, he has what's called, this is called a Scotch comb. And Scotch comb is typically for carving limestone, very common in the building trades in Europe. This is a replaceable carbide insert, whether it's a hand-driven Scotch comb or whether it's a machine chisel, and this can be knocked out. You can see this is shimmed with paper just to help it bind, and you should be able to strike it and knock the carbide out. As this dulls, you just replace it, and it's an option instead of having to have a smith, or an expert that would heat treat a typical tool steel comb or claw. So, but this one obviously has been shanked down by the octagon shank. We realize it's for a softer stone, and that often now is more tradition than how the tool is manufactured. Traditionally, an octagon shank would be for marble. Marble would have a harder shank, a tempered edge, and a softened pole, because you'd strike it with a steel or an iron hammer. Limestone usually would be 6-sided, sometimes 8, but it would have a hardened pole that would be struck with a wooden dummy or a mallet, and they break off, and then they'd have a hardened edge, of course, tempered edge to carve with. You can't interchange the two because you need the hardened shank to carve harder stone, and if you use that softer shank, like on marble, they'll tend to bend and noodle. But this is made for the smaller receiver tool, and so you can carve with it. This larger receiver tool, and it's not clear to me whether this is an adapter that you can turn into this when you remove here, or if this is a completely different machine. This uses a square shank tool, which is typically a granite tool, a hard stone tool, and that's just a regular 5/8 shank like the ones I normally carve stone with. And so this is but it's a tooth chisel, it's a claw, so it's made for limestone or marble, because that's not the kind of tool you use to carve granite with. These tools, we're not give you a quick demonstration of the way they run. Because it has a trigger on the bottom, you can control it very well and still pull the trigger and let off without having to change your grip like a back strap tool. This will, it has an air valve because it doesn't have a ball cock on the hose. This has a valve here that you can adjust, and by turning that out or in, you can go down to where you can ease the carve gently. Now, this is just the way the tool is. Like I said, this isn't what I carve with. I'm sure it's fine for carving. So you can run it down to where you'll get absolutely no hit at all. But this will also put energy into your arm in a different way. You will fatigue through your forearm and into your elbow with this tool in ways you won't if you're holding a typical pneumatic hand machine like this, where a lot of that energy is pushed back towards you and you only suffer fatigue in your hand. Now this is a larger shank tool. The smaller shank tool, they've got a couple versions on the Gibson site, and they only list a difference in the number of strikes per minute. One's a precision and it strikes about 3,900 hits per minute, and the other one is listed at 6,000. This tool is a little bit worn because it stalls and it's got some blow-by. These fittings aren't just, there's some variation of these fittings, they're probably Chinese. So this tool is another small shank and it actually hits harder, works a lot better. But what I wanted to show you about the difference in these and the way they're set up, I mentioned this on my regular hand machines. This machine, this is an aluminum body with aluminum threads, and that's a real potential issue. Now the manufacturer probably doesn't mind it because somebody doesn't know what they're doing, will run their fitting straight into the aluminum, let it get loose, and it'll erode those threads. You throw the machine away and you buy another one for 600 euros. Okay, that's good for the company that makes them. If you want it to last, you need to get a steel bushing like this tool has, turn it in there really tight, and then make sure that never moves, and then you always service it in that steel bushing and you'll preserve your machine longer. These are set up to be clipped directly to your airline. I never do that, as I mentioned. If I'm going to have a whip, I just have the whip a certain length. If I was going to have a quick connect, and I'd put a regular air fitting on here, a nipple for the hose, and I'd screw the hose directly on. So I'm staying off these threads. I'm not making this any longer, because by making this tool longer, especially if you happen to have an air valve on here, it's so long that you may pry against it and you'll break a fitting off here or potentially here, or you'll begin to erode those threads. So don't do it. I mean, if you want to, go ahead. I'd rather have two airlines hanging if I'm going to carve in a stationary place in the studio. Instead of switching hoses back and forth, you can just put a splitter and run two hoses, and to me it's money better spent. As far as taking them apart and cleaning them, there are, like Gibson offers a cleaning service. If you keep your hoses clean, if you've got this laying around, you can get dirt and debris and mud and bugs and whatever in there. When you charge it with air, it's going to blow it through your machine. So that's another reason for not having this open orifice right here at your tool for anything to get in there. If you take it apart, the biggest problem with these tools, if you're going to lubricate them, you have to keep oil in them on a regular basis. The more oil you put in them, the more oil is likely to come out and stain your stone. That may not be a problem. But if you want to oil them, keep them oiled. If you do take them apart to clean them, realize that the reason a lot of them don't work when you put them back together is because you put them back together the wrong way. And he said this one he had it apart, and a lot of times people put these together in a way that the air valve is in the wrong orientation. They'll take them apart and see this piece here. They may put it in upside down, but if you look, you've got a witness where that'll sit flat right in the bottom there. And you've also got more with this valve here. And this valve will typically have pins. And let's see if it's got to where it lines up. And you've got pins, and you've also got an air manifold that crosses it. And so if you look, you can see that they're dirty or dingy in a specific way, and that's how your air flows. So you have to make sure that that goes together in the right order. As far as this tool here, this is all, there's your piston, and as your piston wears out, this is what strikes. you may find that you got a chip on here or some damage, or you may have wear on this or in the cylinder bore. Sometimes if it's been left open, you'll have bugs. I live in the southeastern United States. It's real common to have tiny mud daubers get in here and plug this up. Just try to be careful and clean it all out. But the tools only come together and go apart in certain ways, and the biggest issue with these tools not working is that somebody's taken them apart and reassembled them in the wrong order. Now this does have a barrel on it. You can turn this air exhaust to go where you want it before you screw it back together tight, and then you'll actually have a machine that works. Now see, these pins here will go back and line up, and then we've got these different parts here that just go together. The trigger's a similar mechanism. So, but if you take it apart and it doesn't work when you put it back together, it's probably got more to do with you than anybody else. And keep it lubricated, make it work. And if you got to force it, you did something wrong. So, but that's pretty much it. They're, as far as I know, they're high quality tools. I don't use them because they don't fit what I do, but some people like them a lot, so you might want to give them a try. But I hope that gives you a little bit more information about the F&Ks, and that's about it. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, talking about pneumatic hand machines made by a company called F&K over in Europe. Before we wrap this video up, I did a little bit more research. I'm back at the studio now. I was at a friend's shop with those other F&Ks, and been able to find out a little bit more. I did come to realize that my machine is probably older than the ones I was handling. It has a plastic body, not an aluminum body, with a plastic cover, rubber cover, which appears more like the ones that are online available for sale now. Had the metal bushing. My ring is plastic as opposed to an aluminum one like on the ones that Steve has. And the way my barrel is constructed on this one, the muffler is free and it turns. It isn't locked in place as you screw the machine back together to run it. So you could turn the air as you're working to orient it a different way without having to loosen the whole cylinder and take it out of the main body. This is metal here, but it also has an F&K. The ones that Steve had a open aluminum spot here, and they didn't really on the top, and they had a 46 or a 43 in a number, but it didn't seem to be any model number. They didn't even say F&K on them, so they're just different, probably manufacturing changes. What I did found was, and I'll put these, graphics on better, just printed these out for this discussion, but Tabula Rossa out of Italy, info at tabularossa.it, they offer 6 different versions of these hand machines, of these F&Ks, and what their write-up says, which is a little more than what Gibson's talks about, is that there are 3 different hammers in each product series of the Precisio and the Precisio SE. In each case, the different piston weight and or piston stroke are the decisive factors in how they perform. And obviously, with a heavier piston and a longer stroke, it's going to run slower. It's for heavier stone. We've had some questions about one of the comments on the videos of regular hand machines was that some of the machines run really fast and don't seem to do much work. Well, small hits, a lot of small hits are better for softer stone. You'll cut stone more effectively than having long hard hits. The long hard hits do move stone, but you don't have as much control, especially in softer stone, but you need that for granite, for hard stone. So there's 3 different sizes, from the pictures, it looks like these are both going to be the smaller, the ones with the more blunt nose are going to be the ones that take the shank down tool, like I mentioned, and then this long nose that sticks out are made more for the 5/8 shank tool and probably harder stone. And so you'd have one that's probably a longer stroke, it hits a little harder, or it may be a different piston mass. Even if it's the same diameter, it's a heavier piston. So that's what I've been able to find out. And like I said, there's a little more information on Tabula Rasa than there is on the Gibson website. Either one of them can probably answer your questions. This isn't a commercial for them. They're not sending me free machines to use. I'm just telling you what I found. And like I said, I don't carve with this machine. It doesn't fit how I'm used to carving, and it may work great for you, but that's the difference in these tools versus a regular straight hand machine that doesn't have a trigger. But apparently these older F&Ks are going to have a plastic body, plastic ring on the trigger. Even these threads are plastic, so it makes having a steel bushing even more critical than just screwing something into the plastic, because that makes them almost disposable in a pretty short order, and they're not cheap. I mean, they cost way more than a Trowel and Holden does. So if you're going to spend that much money, you got to take care of it. So but that's it. That'll wrap up this video on these F&K hand machines. I don't think there's another one like it on the YouTube, internet, anywheres. So I'll post these up at the end of the video, and y'all can check everything out and make your decisions accordingly. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio. I'm a granite sculptor, but I carve all kinds of stone and I use all kinds of equipment. And talking about F&K hand machines, Froelich Kluepfel. So good luck with that, man. Thanks for coming in.